I will vote to ratify the New START treaty between the United States and Russia because it leaves our country with enough nuclear warheads to blow any attacker to kingdom come. I'm convinced that Americans are safer and more secure with the New START treaty than without it.
Puts an exclamation point on efforts to pass START.
And make no mistake, Rick, they now have enough votes to pass that treaty. Top Line begins right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Jonathan Karl.
Every day at noon Eastern, we're right here bringing you the latest in politics. Twitter.com/Rick Klein, Twitter.com/John Karl. And you know you're a nerd if your Twitter is fired up with census tweets today. But, John, what's going on the Hill?
Well, we will get to the census, but I'm going to start with Start Me Up. Now, as we heard with Senator Lamar Alexander, also support from Johnny Isakson, Bob Corker, Republicans are now coming out, a number of them, and saying that they will vote to ratify the START treaty. And by my count, Rick, they now have the 67 votes they need to ratify that treaty. This treaty will be ratified when the Senate gets around to voting on it. Could even be as soon as today, more likely tomorrow. Another big lame duck victory for President Obama.
Wow, he is chalking them up. It has been an active week on Capitol Hill. President Obama, a lot of reasons to smile going into the holidays. And speaking of smiling, next up today, down for the count. Christmas comes early and it lasts a decade for Republicans. Take a look at the latest map that just out from the Census Bureau this morning. The congressional seats, winners and losers. The big winners are in big Republican parts of the country. Texas adding 4 seats. Florida, where Republicans control state politics, adding 2 seats. Also adding in Utah, in Arizona, South Carolina, and Georgia. Not a lot of Democratic seats. And meanwhile, more power is going to bleed away from the industrial Midwest and the Northeast. Those are more likely to be Democratic states. This means a much different map for Republicans in 2012, including on the presidential level.
Yeah, and Rick, think about it this way. You have 8 states, by my count, that are gaining House seats. 7 of those states have Republican governors. Redistricting is going to be big, also a big help, as well as the population developments. This is, of course, an early Christmas present, as you say, for Republicans. Next up, Haley's comment. Haley Barbour is under fire for some comments he made during an interview with Andrew Ferguson of the Weekly Standard about the civil rights movement. Barbour, of course, is from Mississippi, grew up in Yazoo City, and in his recollection, he told Andrew Ferguson regarding the struggle for civil rights back in the early 60s, "I just don't remember it as being that bad." Well, not necessarily a good thing for a politician from the South to be saying.
Especially not if you're trying to beat the first African-American president. One of the striking things about this interview is that he goes there on his own. It's not like this was under sharp questioning from an interviewer. He decided to volunteer these comments about race, and it suggests that he hasn't really thought through the way these kind of comments play. Those are the questions you get asked all the time on the 2012 campaign trail. And finally today, miracle deferred. New York senators have been talking about a Christmas miracle for the 9/11 first responders. That bill looked like it was on the move again early this week, but it's hit another series of snags. And John, this may be the kind of item that just falls by the wayside with so many other things on the agenda right now. They still have things to work out with this 9/11 bill.
Rick, the bill is not dead yet, but it's close. And the interesting thing here is, you know, by any count, they do have the 60 votes they need to pass the bill, but they just don't have the time. The clock is running out, and unless they had complete cooperation from the Republican side, it would be impossible to pass this bill before Christmas. So it looks pretty bad, although not done. Jon Stewart has been on a crusade about this, as you know, but Jon Stewart had the last show of the year just a couple days ago. So no more help from Jon Stewart on that. But we do have some help on Top Line here from Congressman Steve King from Iowa. Thank you for joining us here on Top Line. This lame duck is really unbelievable, all that's been done. More in the last 6 days than the last 6 months. What do you make of it?
Well, it is unbelievable, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. It's unprecedented to see that people that have been told by the American voters that they've had enough of the 111th Congress. They'd like to shut it down November 2nd, and still Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi march on, throwing another pie in the face of the American people, driving an agenda that's not an agenda that's supported by the American people, and doing so as a last exit sign. And Harry Reid talking about carrying this out all the way into 2011 and all the way on up until the new Congress is seated. Can you imagine the end of the 111th Congress and watching Nancy Pelosi hand the gavel over to John Boehner seamlessly, almost like passing a baton in a relay race? Not really shutting down the 111th Congress, but transitioning it into the 112th. That seems to be where they're going here if they don't get what they want.
Congressman King, as you know, there have been a lot of things that have happened in lame duck Congresses, including the impeachment of President Clinton. We've talked a lot about rules reform, process reform under Republicans. Can you commit, should Republicans commit to not having major legislative action in the next lame duck in the 112th?
Well, if it were up to me, I would say yes, and it isn't probably going to be up to me, but I have long believed that when the Congress is repudiated, and it's different when it's an election like 1994 or 1948 or 2010, that's a different scenario than when you have a marginal number of seats that are transitioned. But even still, there are 87 freshmen Republican, there are 9 freshmen Democrats waiting in the wings, and they want to have a say in the direction of this country, and they don't want to have to come in here and try to undo this mess that's being created by the outgoing Congress that is characterized by the word spite more than statesmanship by any measure.
So do your colleagues over in the Senate, your Republican colleagues, bear some of the blame for this? I mean, they could, none of this stuff would get through if it didn't have Republican support.
I would like to see nothing go through the Senate under UC at this point, nothing but a CR. That's the thing that's important, is to bridge this government over.
You mean the stopgap spending bill to fund the government for a few more months?
And then that should be a minimal. But however, whatever the new leaders ask for time to be able to address the 2011 budget, what's left of that, they should do a CR to that point and stop the rest of this silliness. There's nothing here that's urgent or could have been done before the election. These are the issues that they wanted to avoid being held accountable for, and now they're moving this agenda here in the lame duck Congress. So I just think it's disingenuous. It says the wrong thing to the American people. Republicans should remember this too. To make your point, Republicans should remember this too, and only do the business that's necessary to bridge over for the new Congress.
Congressman King, in just 2 weeks from tomorrow, you talk about all these new members who are going to arrive on Capitol Hill. What does Congress plan to do? What do you think needs to happen in those first couple of days to send a message to the American people? Do you need to see health care, for example, repealed week 1, day 1?
That would be my position today. If the tax brackets had not been addressed last week, then I think that should be H.R. 1. Since it is addressed, then I believe the repeal of Obamacare needs to be H.R. 1. And that would be a clear, standalone, 100% repeal without equivocation, without any marginal things at all. Repeal it all, pull it all out by the roots, lock, stock, and barrel, so there's not one vestige of it left behind, and then move forward with the rest of our business. But it'll be harder than that. Just sending that over to the Senate doesn't solve this. It will be a long march through 2011 and actually into 2012 before we will see the end of Obamacare.
Now, you saw a lot of talk about the bipartisan deal on the tax extension as something that, first of all, seemed to have a lot of public approval. Finally, you had the two parties working together on something. But what's your sense? Are we going to see more of that? Are we going to see Republicans reaching out to this president and working with him on issues maybe like tax reform? Or are we going to see some real clashing? Is your real goal here to stop him in his tracks?
Well, I think that a lot of this is up to the president. He will set the tone, and I've seen about 3 things that made me optimistic about perhaps the president stepping up to do some triangulation. Politically, that's not good for Republicans, but it is good for America. And so the way that he addressed the tax brackets was one sign of it. Another one was the way he conducted himself when he presented the Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant Salvatore Giunta. And the third thing I saw was shortly after that when he did a surprise visit to Afghanistan and spoke off script and spoke from his heart. Those 3 things were good indicators that perhaps the president is maturing into this job and he's ready to do business in a responsible fashion that sets a tone. We'll see. For me, we have to hold the line on this spending. This is about debt and deficit. The American people have spoken. If the president wants to join us in that task, we're eager to work with him. If he's not, we're eager to step forward anyway. If that means we have to do battle politically, that's our job here in Washington, D.C. if it comes to that.
Congressman King, in the last moments we have left here, I noticed some blog buzz recently after an interview you did on television talking about the Iowa caucuses. Obviously, you'll be out there as a member of Congress from Iowa, but is there any chance that you'll be out there as a participant in the caucuses, as a candidate for president in 2012?
Well, I have said that I'm short only two things, and that is a calling and a groundswell. So if those two things emerge, I'll be engaged in it 100%. Meanwhile, I do want to be involved in some of the debate because setting the agenda for America takes place in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and maybe Nevada. It's important for our country that we have a good, legitimate debate, and I'm looking forward to that taking place all over the state, and welcome all the candidates to come.
Okay, quickly, right now, the three front runners for the Iowa caucuses. If right now, if this were to happen today.
Well, I happen to know from a poll that we ran in the first week in October, and it's probably not changed very much, that it was Mike Huckabee and Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich in that order. Now, that probably hasn't changed much, but they've spent a lot of time in Iowa, and a dark horse candidate or two or three could emerge to sweep the Iowa caucuses.
And if Palin got in, where would she be?
She'd change the dynamics. She'd absolutely change the dynamics, and she would be a player, and she would be in competition for #1 in my view.
All right, Congressman Steve King, thank you so much for joining us here.
I appreciate it. Glad to do that.
And you know, Rick, he has been spending a lot of time in Iowa.